Thank you for joining us. You're watching a career success video from Computer Coach. Computer Coach is a Tampa-based computer training center specializing in helping IT and business professionals add on the skills they need to reach their desired career goals. If you are job searching, in transition, or are looking for guidance, please feel free to reach out to us at www.computercoach.com. Now, let's get started.
Okay, everyone, let's get this awesome presentation with great content started. So if you joined us after my introduction, I'm Suzanne Ricci. It is a pleasure to have you here. I'm the Chief Success Officer at Computer Coach. And today we have Chris Rosbaugh with Apex Systems here today. Chris has worked in the recruiting space for almost 10 years. He works quite a bit with candidates, helping discuss salary negotiation and overall job offer negotiation. And today he is here to help us as job seekers learn and grow what is even negotiable when we get a job offer. So with that, Chris, I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
That sounds great. Thank you. Well, first of all, good morning, everyone. It's great to virtually meet you all. We'll have to catch up a little later on LinkedIn. We can deal with that at the end of the meeting here. But just in the meantime here, quick introduction. As Suzanne mentioned, I've been with Apex just under 10 years now, always in the recruiting chair, and just really happy to share some knowledge about how you can help negotiate on your own. We're always happy to do it on your behalf when you work with an agency, but a lot of times you are going to be out there on your own, and it's going to be really helpful to arm you with some of this information. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here so you can see my notes as we go. So what I like to start with is preparation. This is the most important part of your negotiation. If you're not prepared, you're going to struggle with every other step. And the first thing, and we don't always like to talk about this, but I think we're doing a better job about it now during the pandemic, but there's a big mental health aspect to this. I know a lot of you have been searching for jobs for maybe a long time, or you've been in a job a long time and the thought of changing a job is terrifying. It's a big stress point in a lot of people's lives. And that's something you need to be able to come to terms with up front, because you want to be mentally prepared and you don't want to sell yourself short or panic or give up in the middle of the process, which it's easy to do sometimes. So take a moment at the beginning of your job search and really talk to yourself about what you're going to be experiencing. And then, I would follow up with that is, don't take it personally. There are a lot of job seekers right now. It's just simply the nature of where we are in the economic cycle. But you could be absolutely fantastic, but you could always come in second place. And it's key to not take that personally. You just don't know enough about the other people in the process. Maybe it was an internal referral. Maybe they knew the manager. Maybe they were priced significantly below market. You just can't be sure. And so I would always say, don't take any of this personally. No one's, talking to me about a job negotiation and saying, Chris, we don't want to hire you at this price. It's usually, we would like to hire someone else. And I don't see it as a negative. Unfortunately, it's just a little more positive for someone else sometimes. But once we're finished with that, you're actually ready to do this undertaking. Prepare. There is not a more important part of this other than the celebration at the end. But the preparation is really where you set yourself up for success. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is a little bit market research. This could be as simple as talking to your local network. This could be talking to people in a meetup group similar to this. This could be a little more robust. Maybe you're using online free tools to look at the job market. It could be LinkedIn has some analytics things. Glassdoor is always great. Google searches are surprisingly powerful if your Boolean's pretty good. But being able to know what your market looks like for what you want to do. For instance, if you're looking for a project management role and you would like to make $300,000, you're going to have to level your expectations. Either you need a different job or you need a more reasonable budget. That being said, also, if you're getting job offers at $25,000 for the same role, you need to keep looking at the market because they're trying to undersell for what you do. So knowing what that market looks like and really being able to have a good expectation going in is going to be a great platform and really a great foundation for the goals you want to meet. After that, meet a headhunter or an agency recruiter. Of course, I lean toward agency recruiter because I'm an agency recruiter. However, This doesn't have to be exclusive. Reach out to everyone you can. Everyone you can meet. Everyone you can talk to about your goals, tell them what your goals are. Even sometimes when you're not looking, those passive referrals are great. That's how I got my job here at Apex. I wasn't looking for a new role. I just happened to have a friend who worked at Apex and loved it. And he'd always bring it up. And then one night over dinner, he convinced me. I said, okay, I'll talk to your boss tomorrow. And that was 10 years ago. September 26, 2011 is the date. And I've been with Apex and very happy ever since. So always talk to people that might be able to help you, or you might be able to help. You just never know where these job opportunities will come from. And then you need to make your budget. And this is tough. Everyone has different budgetary goals. Some of us are more fiscally responsible than others. Some of us have children. Some of us have spouses. Spouses may work, spouses may not work. Some of us may have really good savings, some might not. Expensive area you live in, cheaper area you live in, other bills. Infinite possibilities on your own financial situation. But knowing that you are in control of your financial situation and are able to budget appropriately is another part of that foundation. Because a number on paper is only as good as the research you've done. You could be very excited about a job offer and you just see the number with the commas in there and you love it. But did you factor in, was this going to pay for my house? Is this going to pay for my car? Is this going to pay for education, et cetera, et cetera? So you have to make sure that your goal is going to be enough for you to survive. If not, there's no point in making that your goal. It just won't lead you to a point of success. So sitting down and making that budget and knowing what you can accept, and it's more than just budget. So the reason I need to know my budget is maybe it's not just money I'm looking for. Maybe I really want to work from home. Maybe that's important to me. You have kids that getting off the school bus once they're back in school, and you want to be there for that. Maybe they're in sporting events. Maybe you have someone that you care for that you have to take to doctor's appointments during the day. It could be any number of things, but it's not just money. And so being able to understand what goes into it is very important, except you still have that bare minimum budget and you have to hit your budget so you can survive. And that leads me into really just deciding what's important to you. I just alluded to it there for a moment, but there's so much more that goes into total compensation than your dollar amount salary. You've got location, you've got remote work from home, the benefits plan. Health benefits are something where I think we're all being faced with it right now is extremely important. You want to make sure that you have great coverage so you can stay healthy and affordably healthy. Retirement plan, it's something that we don't always plan for as well as we should, but it's key. And if you find some company that's going to do a match for you and you look at what that's going to mean over your 20, 30, 40-year career, it can be a lot more important to you than an extra $3,000, $5,000 in your salary. It's worth doing that math, so take a look for that. Bonuses. It depends on your individual motivation, but some people love the bonus. They want to chase the bonus. That can be tough. That can be easy. It really depends on what their bonus structure looks like. And that is a fair question. We'll get to that later, but that is a fair question. Find out that bonus structure. Commissions isn't something I've listed here, but is also important. It's similar to bonus, but sometimes you take a job with a lower pay rate and higher commission. You're betting on yourself and you're betting on the market going well, but it can be more lucrative. Again, it's something else you have to decide for. And then vacation and sick days. It's important. You need to have time off to recharge, to mentally prepare and just be happier and healthier and spend time with your families or friends. Some people might think 2 weeks a year is fine. Some might need 4. Some might need even more. And that's something you have to decide for yourself on where you fall on that vacation / private time / sick time scale. So once we've got all that done, all the preparation, we're ready to go, let's start applying for jobs and start discussing salary. So initial discussions in recruitment. And the reason I add recruitment in here is you should work with a recruiter, even if you don't need one, just as an extra. I'm not saying rely on your recruiters, but it's an extra lever to pull. There's only so many jobs that you can apply for in the day, but if you have someone else helping you, you could essentially double, maybe triple that, because you don't have to be involved that whole time. Now, there's a lot of different types of recruiters and people you're going to speak with in this process. And it's important to know the difference and know their motivations. There's a lot of people out there willing to help, but if you don't know why they're helping you, it can be a little counterproductive. So let's start with headhunters. A headhunter is someone who's going to help you find a role that you will end up paying. So they're very motivated to get you a role, and generally they're paid as a percentage of your first year of salary. So they would like to get you as much money as they can. So they're pretty well aligned with what you want to do. So you know they're going to negotiate as upward as they can with the client because they're on a percentage basis. Next, you have your agency recruiter, which, this is my area of expertise. This is what I do. We are similar in that we're generally compensated on the most money you can potentially make. So agency recruiters are also really going to try to drive the price up for your labor because that's how we make money. With that being said, the difference between the agency recruiter and the headhunter is the headhunter works for you. You pay the headhunter, they work for you to help you. An agency recruiter, they're paid by the companies. And so their primary focus is finding the right talent for the company, whereas the headhunter wants to find you the right job. So there's some different motivation there. It doesn't mean it has to work against you, but it is something to keep in mind. And then lastly, you have your internal HR recruiters. These are the people that work for the company you're applying to. And this shifts. So they're very motivated to get the best talent for their company. And a lot of times that can mean you. However, they would like to pay you a little less. They have their salary bands, but a lot of times they'd like to stay in the lower part of the salary band. Not all the time, but it is something to be cognizant of. They're likely going to pay a little bit lower. And so you actually have more room for negotiation because you know that they're going to target the lower end of their band. And so you can be, I don't want to say more aggressive, but you can be a little more, you can reach a little bit more. You can try to drive that number up. You'll have more success in that area in your negotiation. As part of these processes, you're going to get a lot of questions, of course. One of them is going to be, what are you currently making? Don't answer this question. Depending on where you live and where the company is, they may not even be allowed to ask you the question. I would be misleading you if I told you I knew the regulations for all 50 states. I don't, but just as an example, you can't ask this question in New York. If the company's based in New York or if the candidate sits in New York, you can't ask that question. Pennsylvania did the same. California did the same. I think it's up to 11 or 12 different states so far that have signed on for this, but don't answer the question. There's no good reason for you to answer this. There's no benefit for you to answer this. You're always going to put yourself at a disadvantage. Instead, what I like to say is, this is what I'm targeting. Because what I'm making today shouldn't have any effect on what I make tomorrow. I'm not working the same job. Why should I work the same salary? It's not apples to apples. It's not a good metric for anything. So I always steer a little different approach. I'll always say, well, I'm targeting this, or I'm looking to make this, rather than saying what I'm actually making. The next question you're going to get, and this one's a little more appropriate, usually after you don't answer that first question, you'll get this one, is what's your target salary? And this is great because you're able to talk about what you want, not what you made, not what you have, but what you want. What are your goals? This is where your prep work comes in, because if you come in uneducated, you can either sell yourself short or you can talk yourself out of a job. So if you sell yourself short to an internal HR recruiter, for instance, they're going to give you that bare bottom number that you talked about. If their band is 50 to 70,000 and you come in and you say you're targeting 40, that's great. You just got 40. They saved their company 10,000 and you just left between $10,000 and $30,000 on the table, which not somewhere we want to be. You have to think, what was my prep work? What does the market look like? No, that's a bad way to say it. I don't want to say what is my value, but what is the value of my labor? Because again, we really want to not take this personally. We want to be able to separate yourself from your job. But what is my labor valued at? What am I going to bring to the table versus what am I going to get out of this? So relying on that prep work, knowing that in your local area, maybe it's your city, maybe it's your state, depending on how broad you want to go, but in your area, what are people with a similar job making? Even better, what are people at that company making? A lot of them will have salary bands that they stick within. So the more information you can find out, the better. And again, Glassdoor is a great resource for that. Also, if you're working with a headhunter or recruiter, ask them. They'll be able to tell you what the markets look like in your individual areas. They'll also be able to help you with this next piece, is that what range are you seeing from other applicants? Because it's not just you and the company talking. or whether or not you're going to be a fit. There's always other applicants. And if everything looks equal between you and one other applicant, but they're cheaper, that's going to come into consideration. Internal HR probably won't answer that question. It's worth asking, but they probably won't answer it. A headhunter may or may not have the information depending on how they like to work. Some take on a very small number of clients and just work with them individually. Some do take on a larger pool of candidates and work with them in kind of en masse. So it'll depend on whether they have the information, but they will still have a good insight. And then your agency recruiter, at minimum, they're probably working with 3 people per role. That's how we like to do things. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less depending on the client, but 3 is kind of our magic number. So it's 3 people applying. Unless you're the first person, there should be an answer for this. And even if you're the first, we know pretty well what the client's targeting. So always worth asking. It's not always information that someone will volunteer, but if you ask, they'll answer. So once we know what the target is from the client or what the other applicants are seeing or what they usually pay from your prep work, that's when we're able to actually start formulating a number. So we don't jump right into salary yet, but we're almost there. And now we have to look at total compensation. That's the last stage. Your compensation is so much more than your salary these days. There's just so many different vehicles to be compensated. There's extra vacation time, there's 401k matches, there's 401k deductions, there are your benefits plan, other retirement plans like a stock purchase program maybe. There's always bonuses, there's commission. Some people put a dollar value on working from home or working remotely. There's so many things that go into it. And this is where you can talk about compensation in a broader range. Salary is always going to be it's going to be the second hardest part to discuss. The first hardest is going to be benefits. Your benefits, there's probably no negotiation there. When I say benefits, I mean health benefits. Generally, a company has the same health benefits for everyone. There's not going to be a negotiation there. It is what it is. I always ask for the benefits plan so you can review it, but you're not really going to negotiate that piece. The next difficult piece will be salary. Everyone negotiates salary. Everyone's prepared to negotiate salary, so they're able to work against you almost because they're also prepared to discuss salary because that's what everyone does. So you may want to come in and really focus on additional commissions or additional bonuses because they're likely less prepared to negotiate against you for those areas. If you're targeting, say your range is 40 to 60,000, your midpoint's right there at 50, and that they pay usually around 45 at this company. Maybe you go in at 45, but you target a larger bonus. And again, you got to do the math here, and you always want to ask, how often do people hit their bonuses? What do these bonus metrics look like? Get as much information as you can, but leaning somewhere differently is sometimes a really good way to shake things loose. If you're having that salary discussion and you can't get the needle to move, they're just holding really firm on this is what we're paying, this is what we're paying, this is what we're paying. Great. Come at it from a different aspect. Talk about, can you get an extra week of vacation? Can you get paid sick leave? Can you drive that bonus up? So that's why you really have to put the value on these and how they matter to you back from the prep work. And this is where you can start to take advantage of that. When it comes to the actual negotiation, here are just a few notes that I want to give you on how you can use them in a kind of a broad aspect here. The first one, use remote work to your advantage by shopping in different markets. This is new this year, and this has been really exciting for the labor market, for my company specifically. My team within Apex has really been excited by this, but remote work's really the great equalizer here. If you live in an area, I know a lot of you live in Florida. Generally in Florida, we see salaries a little lower because you don't have your state income tax, and in many areas, the cost of living is a little bit lower. There's nothing stopping you from getting a job in an expensive market these days. And if you're looking to drive your salary number up, targeting those expensive markets is a good way to do it because they're used to those bigger numbers. They are so used to dealing with their insane cost of living, 250% sometimes. We're talking about New York, California, Chicago, Minneapolis. They're used to dealing with those larger salaries. They don't usually balk at them as quickly. There's nothing stopping you from applying in other states. Absolutely nothing. Some companies, depending on their local labor market, will not hire you if you're in certain locations. Specifically, I'm alluding to California, New York. They have some unique labor laws where If I'm a company hiring a remote worker that sits in one of those states, there's a lot of extra compliance that I have to deal with, and sometimes added cost. So a lot of companies will avoid that. But if you're living in a low cost of living market, there's nothing stopping you from getting a job outside your local market, which is just a really quick way to see a small bump, sometimes a larger bump. Again, California, New York, their salaries can get out of hand very quickly because they're used to just an insane cost of living that you don't have. You're not paying those fees, but there's no reason for you to not take advantage of the extra salary. So I'd always recommend trying that. You just have to be prepared that it's got to be a remote role for the long term. You don't want to deal with this again in 6 months when all of a sudden the discussion of we'd like to have you on site comes in. So talk to your recruiter, talk to the HR recruiter, talk to your headhunter, and make sure that this is truly long-term remote if you're going to use that strategy. The next one I think is important. Honesty versus putting yourself at a disadvantage. Honesty is the right policy here. It's not the same thing as putting yourself in a weak point in negotiation. I'm not saying to come in and say, hey, I make this number right now. Here's my bonus. Here's my benefits. You don't have to give someone all of the information about you to be honest. What I really mean for honesty here is first being honest with yourself and your prep work and knowing what you're actually looking for and knowing your budget, and then being able to reconcile that with what we see as your market. You have to sometimes come to terms with the value of the role that you're in nationwide. Is that in line with your expectations? But assuming all of that, honesty to me in this process means telling your recruiter or your HR recruiter or your headhunter what you're really looking for. Nobody wants to go into a long process where you said, hey, I'm really looking for $50,000. That's my target. They get through multiple interviews. You've put all this time in, you get the offer, and then 50,000 is not going to work for you anymore. No one wants to be in that situation. It's bad for you. It's bad for them. It can definitely lead to you burning some bridges and having trouble getting into that company later on. Nobody likes putting in all the work to get you to the offer, especially when you have managers, taking multiple hours doing all the interviews with you. Maybe it's even a panel, and then you're not joining. So make sure you are honest with yourself and honest with everyone you're working with about your targets. Again, you don't have to tell them what you're making. Don't put yourself at a disadvantage, but be honest about what you want. Giving the first number doesn't have to be a disadvantage. I know that's the old adage, whoever gives the first number in negotiation loses. And sure, on its face, that can be true. However, if you have really strong prep work and you know what those ranges are anyway, throwing out the first number isn't really throwing out the first number. You already found the first number, and the first number is the range that you researched. If you know the company's going to offer a range of 40 to 60,000, telling them that you're targeting 55,000 isn't a disadvantage because you worked their range. You already knew it, so use it against them. This part is kind of a psychological game, and everyone plays it differently. But if you get a range, again, we'll keep using 40 to 60. Coming in at 60, not always great. You want to differentiate yourself, but there's nothing to stop you from coming in at 58. I mean, it doesn't have to be, divisible by 5. I know a lot of us negotiate in just easy increments. You don't have to. You can get as granular as you want to. Maybe you're looking for 57,540. That's fine. Go ahead, let them know. It can be an easier way to negotiate because one, you can throw people off with that number. It's not the quick, easy math they were used to, but also it shows that you really have done your research here and you know exactly what it's going to take for you to make the move. So don't feel like you can't throw out a number as long as you've researched. Because if you've researched, it's not really the first number. You already have the first number from your research. 2, get granular. And then the last thing here on negotiation is all facets of compensation other than benefits are negotiable. I know we touched on this a little bit earlier, but you really want to be able to look at every piece and take advantage. Maybe it's one extra vacation day. Maybe it's one extra sick day. Maybe it's being able to work from home 3 days a week, 2 days a week, 1 day a week, whatever it may be. Maybe if you're traveling for a long-term role that's just travel, with you based in a different city, maybe it's expenses. There's always room for negotiation at each piece. And you might think, oh, 1 vacation day, that's not a lot to me. No, by itself, it's not. But you have 1 vacation day, and then maybe you negotiated the salary up $3,000, $4,000. These things add up because, again, it's total compensation. Don't put your blinders on and look at your salary because there's so much more to it than that. Also, duties are important. And again, touching back on the mental health, you don't want to be in a job you hate, and you don't want to do a job that you're not prepared for. So factor that in. Make sure that this salary is going to work for you, but also the job is going to work for you for that salary. I know a lot of times we're willing to be in a more stressful situation for more money, and that's something you got to factor in. But so really, this is where all the negotiation should happen, is between the initial meeting and usually the first interview. Sometimes you can do some negotiation after the first interview if maybe you got new information. How many times has someone applied for a job and then interviewed and it's not what you expected? That happens a lot. And we see a lot of times your job descriptions are written by an HR representative, not someone actually doing the job. And so it's a lot of buzzwords, but not a lot of data. Sometimes you apply for a job and you really don't have a job description. You just had someone call you and say, hey, I need a Java developer, and you just go for it. Once you get more information, it is completely appropriate to have another discussion. I would always say have another discussion. Even if that discussion is simply confirming what you've already told them, I like to say it again and again. That way, if the expectation changed on someone else's end, I want to know it now before I keep putting time into this process. Because if I'm going to spend 2-3 hours interviewing over time, I want to make sure I'm still getting what I want out of it. I don't want to waste my time. And finally, the offer. This is a time I would recommend not negotiating. There's a lot that goes into putting an offer together from a client. Usually, this is the point where it's done. It's on paper. They're ready to make you the offer. Don't negotiate here. I would strongly advise against it. It's even if you are successful and you get the role, it is a very poor first impression, and you just don't want that to be what you're known for on day one. I would recommend negotiating very strictly up front, negotiating a little less, a little more casually, but continue the discussions during the interview process. But once we get to the offer, just in my opinion, that's usually something I like to treat as it's a done deal. It's on paper. If I want the role, now's the time. But if I don't, there's also a time to walk away. Not usually a good place for negotiation, but this is also very important. It's not negotiation, but it can be a hurdle. Get it in writing. It's great when you get that phone call, you get the excited recruiter or HR recruiter telling you, hey, you got the job, you accept. And that it's completely appropriate. Be excited. You should be. You worked hard, you got here. It's definitely a time for celebration, but get it in writing. And once you get it in writing, read it. Read it again. Have a friend read it. Make sure that it's what you expected. You want to look over your benefits plan again. Maybe when they were recruiting you, they shared last year's benefits plan because it's all they had on hand. Changes happen year to year. Read it again. Make sure you get in writing what your vacation days look like. What are your sick days? Sometimes you'll hear people say, oh, we don't put it in writing, but it's our general policy. Don't do that. If it's their general policy, they have it written down somewhere. Get it in writing. You don't want to sell yourself short and not get what you agreed to here. So get your vacation days, get your bonus structure, get your salary, get their 401k information, get your benefits guide, get your total compensation offered, and review it. This can take a day or two, and that's okay. If you let them know what you're doing, you're not going to lose a job offer over this. What they don't want to see is don't get the offer and say, I'm not sure, and then take a week. That's going to make everyone uncomfortable, and they may pursue other candidates. But if you tell them, hey, I'm really excited, this is great, let me look over the paperwork just one last time, I'll let you know tomorrow, or I'll let you know the day after. Set the timeline, that way they know what to expect, but that's not going to be a detriment to you. And that's really key right there. If it's not what you discussed, there's two ways you can go. You can push back on it and point out, hey, this isn't what we discussed, or you can walk away. It's a personal choice. Personally, I'm a stickler for paperwork. If we discuss something and you gave me something different on paper, that rubs me the wrong way and I walk away. I'll apply somewhere else. But that's me personally, and that's me personally saying that from a position where I'm currently employed. If I'm not employed, maybe a little more flexible. It would depend. But that's something to keep in mind there. So on that note, that once we get the job here, we're ready to go.
With that, everyone, have an awesome weekend, right? We get to form what our weekend is going to be. So be positive, be great. Good luck on your job searches, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions at all.
Great to meet everybody. Thanks for taking the time.
To learn more about our training programs, classes, and what sets us apart, please visit our website at www.computercoach.com.